Welcome to Creating Magic in Your Relationship. I am your host, Lisa Holt, and today I have with me Bex Burton, and I'm so excited to have a conversation with her. And Bex, can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do?
Sure, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me. And hello, everybody watching. It's wonderful to be with you today virtually. My name is Bex Burton, and I help independent women attract and grow healthy, lasting relationships with amazing people without sacrificing who they are or what they want out of life.
I love it. Very concise and specific. Right? So one of the things that I really like to have a chat about initially is really, at least I'm always curious. How did you end up becoming a coach? Like, what landed you here?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Well, there's a saying, and maybe you've heard it, that your mess is your message. And so I came to this work by being pretty much a complete disaster in love. I talk about the decade of disaster that I experienced, where I had three long-term relationships that all pretty much ended about the same way. About the 2-year mark in, I would start to have these feelings of feeling trapped, feeling stifled, feeling like I was losing myself, giving up what I really authentically wanted out of life to be in this relationship, and would, I like to say, flip the table and walk out of the restaurant. I would end the relationship abruptly. I would say horrible things like, I don't love you anymore, because I was really unskillful and I wasn't really in touch with my own experience. I was very unclear about what was happening other than the fact that I was really uncomfortable and really unsatisfied, and I didn't have any tools to do anything differently. So after the third time that happened in the course of 10 years, I realized that there might be some commonality in this, and it's not the men, it's me, because the men are very different and I am very much the same. So that was when I chose to become a student of love and chose to look a little bit deeper at what was happening in my relationships. And it was then that I recognized that I was getting into relationships for all the wrong reasons. I was feeding my ego, and I was really craving the attention of men to feel good about myself and about my life. So that was when I reprioritized my life and started to live my life for myself and fill my life with the things that really lit me up and made me feel like the creative, extraordinary human being that I am. And that's also when I learned how to date, when I learned how to date men without the attachment or expectation of getting into relationship. And that's when I learned how to discern between what is good for me and my lifestyle and what doesn't really work for me and my lifestyle. And I met this really amazing man about, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years into that process, and started falling in love with him, only to find out that we actually didn't want the same things. So that breakup was the first adult breakup that I actually had in my life, where I felt skillful and I felt like I was making a conscious decision between what I ultimately wanted, which I realized at that point was a relationship, and that I felt like I was ready. But this guy just wasn't it, because we matched in so many ways, but he was very into his career and just not really interested in a committed partnership in the way that I was. So I consciously released him. And about 3 months later, I met the man who's now my husband. And on that journey, we came together with a very beautiful and almost magical beginning. And only to find out that, maybe a year into our relationship, I was having a lot of the same feelings come up. So rather than flip the table and walk out, I recognized that, it's a lot more painful for me to do that at this point with this person than to actually face my intimacy blocks head on. And so I re-enrolled in my in my studies of love, and doubled down in understanding my patterns in love so that I could sustain and grow the relationship that I was in. And that was about maybe 10 years ago. And he and I are happily happily married and sharing our life and co-creating life together ever since. And somewhere along those lines, I decided that I would enjoy helping others, serving women in seeing the blind spots that hold them back and creating the lasting love that they desire.
Wow, what a beautiful story. I love that you share the mess and the message, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so amazing to me as I look back on my own life and see where I would have liked to have hear people's mess a little more and and know that it was okay to have those trials and errors, and it's so I feel relatable to experience those things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's one of the misconceptions about love is that it is messy. Even when we find the person that we want to spend our life with, that wants to spend their life with us, when we find that beautiful mutual match, it doesn't mean that it's all cake and rainbows after that. There's still our habits and our patterns and our ways of being that have gotten us to this point that we now are contending with this other person. And I believe that each individual person on the planet is a universe in and of themselves. So we are, up against their desires, their wounding, their pattern, and, trying to balance and figure out how we fit in together. So, I believe that love and relationships is a lifelong journey. And, I'm also just a very, a student of compassion and self-compassion, being a former, a perfectionist in recovery, we'll call it, and having a fierce inner critic and somebody who has subtly punished myself for doing things wrong all along the way. That's just an inherent wound that I've grown up with and have internalized in my adult relationships, as we do. But I think it's really important to heal that inner critic. She's never going to go away, but to shift the relationship that we have with her so that we're not moving through life feeling like we're doing things right and we're doing things wrong, but rather look at love as a practice that we show up for every day and we do our best. And some days we do better than others. And it doesn't mean that we're a bad person or that we're failing or that we're inherently wrong. It just means that some days we're more able to access our skills and our tool sets and show up with love. And there are some other days where our bratty teenager runs the show, our inner bratty teenager.
Right. And it's true, because I notice, at least with the clients that I work with, one of the biggest things that I help them navigate is this concept of when a woman is looking for that perfect guy and have that perfect relationship, and then it leads to that perfect marriage. And when they realize that doesn't really exist, and you make such an excellent point about how it's a daily practice. And it was one of the things that I had to learn along the way. And it's almost like once you crack that code, it's like, oh my goodness, I've got to share this with everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so when you're working with your clients, are you primarily working with women who are single, or are you working with women who are married?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I work full spectrum. I work with single women who are on the journey to attracting love. I work with, and that includes a lot of inner work and self-reflection, analyzing our patterns from the past, our fears, the things that influence our behaviors in love. I work with women who are actively in their dating life and support them in how to show up with the candidates that they're seeing. For some clients, I'll even be active in their online dating profiles and reviewing the matches that they've made and, suggesting messages that they can send to them and advising them on how to, keep the conversation volley going back and forth, how to move the conversation from texting to an in-person meetup, which is always, the big thing. Like, we've been texting forever. How do we take this to the next step without taking the lead, And then I also work with women in relationships, women who are in committed relationships, women who are in marriage relationships, so that they are supported in accessing the intimacy and closeness that they desire in relationship. I work with women who are both pursuers and withdrawers, though I would say that my specialty is the women who are withdrawers and have some blocks towards intimacy, who might prioritize work and their social life and their hobbies and kind of everything else above getting close with their partner. Because when we go to that place, it feels really vulnerable and really tender. And also that's been my journey. So those women have a very, very special place in my heart.
I'm right there with you. That has been my journey as well. I didn't even know at the time, and it's always the hindsight 2020, because I look back and I'm like, why did I think that was working?
Yeah.
But the lessons we learn along the way, and like when I tell my clients, I'm like, look, I didn't know to seek out help during all of my messiness, right? So I'm just here as a facilitator, as your peer, to really kind of navigate these waters because
Yeah.
it can get messy, and I have learned, and it sounds like you as well, it takes a skill set and it takes a daily practice. And I love that you're so just open, honest, vulnerable about the messiness that it is, because it does get messy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that's another misconception about love and relationships, is that we should just know these things, because our parents certainly didn't hire love coaches. Our grandparents certainly didn't hire love coaches, But the truth is that, well, for one thing, we've learned so much about human behavior and psychology in the time that you and I have been alive on this planet. And so the body of knowledge that exists today that we have access to is far greater than any of our ancestors had access to, and also the circumstances that we deal with on a daily basis are far different than anything that our ancestors had to deal with. Like, they didn't have the internet or cell phones or any of these online dating apps. So we're navigating truly new and novel waters. And on top of all this psychological and human behavior information that is available to us now, there's, like you said, it is a skill set. So if anybody out there is listening and they just feel like they've had the worst luck in love, or they're doing it wrong, or they just can't get it right, the truth is that it's a learnable skill set. And not only that, but that skill set becomes a practice. We don't show up to a yoga class on the very first day expecting to nail our tree pose and our crow, or, whatever the practice is that we do. We don't expect to show up, just doing things perfectly 100% out of the gate. So when we consider that love is this learnable skill set and something that we get to practice, it really eases the effort and softens the way that we relate, not only to ourselves, but to love in general.
Yeah, and I so agree. It's one of the things that, for my own practice, once I realized that, oh, this isn't something you just show up for and you either have it or you don't, or, oh, it's automatic attraction or it's not. It's two people, when we're talking relationship, coming together and committing every single day to become the best version of themselves possible.
Yeah.
And it literally can be that simple in concept. Now, it's not easy, right?
Right. No, totally. Yeah. I love what you said about, again, another misconception is that we feel like we're going to know the person the moment we see them, and, you were saying about this instant attraction, and it doesn't always work out that way. It does take time. It takes a little while to not only get to know somebody, but to get to know their idiosyncrasies, their charm, and it takes some time. For some people, it can be very quick. And for other people, it can be a slow burn. So there's really no one way of two people coming together and falling in love.
100%. And that was something that I had to really come to understand in my own relationship, because all of my past relationships had been similar to your story, where, I was the, as we say, avoider.
Mhm.
And as soon as it got like reached a tender spot or got uncomfortable, I was out.
Right.
Exit left, like,
Uh-huh.
nope, not working, right? And it wasn't until my husband, who I did not connect with initially, we
Hmm.
became friends. And he helped me over time realize that this was about me getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I had figured it out in fitness, because that was my thing. It's like I could do the uncomfortable workout.
Oh,
I
totally.
had to, right? I had to translate that to relationship. Like, oh, it's not, the Disney story. It's like, hey, get comfortable getting uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have that in common. I have a fitness background as well.
Ah,
Yeah.
well, I do remember, as I was telling you before, you have your pre-dance breaks that I really like.
Yeah. Online dance parties. That's the way to go.
Right. So when you're working with clients, what's the biggest challenge you come up against with clients, that maybe is like an ongoing thing that you see happening the most?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, let's see. I would have to sort through a couple of challenges, but I think one of the biggest ones, especially for this group of independent women who are go-getters, who are achievers, and living a life according to their terms. I think the biggest challenge is letting go of control, and allowing things to unfold in natural order. So, for example, a client that I'm working with is just really fallen for this guy. They divorced right around the same time. They've met one another and became very close very quickly. And as this happens, a couple of weeks in or months in, the gentleman said to her, "This is too much. I'm not ready for a relationship. It's too much for my heart right now." And so she was thinking like, okay, let's be friends. And then of course they break up and they continue to spend time together and they continue to have sex together. And so in some way, trying to control the situation in that way by maintaining a friendship, and we talk about like how attempting that friendship is really preventing him from healing and moving on and ever being ready for a relationship with her. It's also preventing her from finding somebody who is ready for the kind of relationship that she wants right now. So we're talking about when and how to have that conversation with him, that it's she's reconsidered and it's probably best that we don't not pursue a friendship, and she's trying to plan it out on the calendar of like when to do that, because we're going here on this date and then we're going to go here and do this, and I don't want to miss this with him, so maybe I'll do it on that following Tuesday. And I'm like, well, so how does that serve you in the meantime? Like knowing the information that now, like knowing, being so clear, because she was in agreement. Yes, I understand. Like I can't pursue a friendship with him, but so ultimately she came to the decision that it was best for her to rip the Band-Aid off and have that conversation with him and forfeit the plans that they had made, because she recognized that she's trying to manipulate the situation to her benefit, to avoid the pain, to avoid maybe going and doing these things alone or with a friend, because she really enjoys his company and his time. And but at the same time, very at her core, she knows that it's not the right thing. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing. We want what we want, and when we can't have it, it's again that bratty teenager comes out to like, well, maybe I'll do it on next Tuesday. So
Right.
letting go of control and going with what we know is true and accurate in our body, in our bones, and being okay with that. And I think that also part of being okay with that is having a healthy relationship with our emotional experience. I know for me in my journey, one of the reasons why I was getting into relationships erroneously was because I wasn't comfortable. I mean, I was okay being by myself and alone, but I wasn't okay with my emotional experience, my complex emotions. So I was using men and relationships as a distraction from experiencing the complex feelings that I have just in everyday life. And we do that in so many different ways. We do that in work. We do that with social media. We do that with shopping or sex or food or, whatever it is. So one of the steps that I teach in creating healthy, lasting, loving relationships with another person is really getting intimate with our own emotional experience and being able to sit with these complex emotions that don't feel good. But the truth is that, emotions that there's a famous drag queen that says feelings aren't facts. I think that there are other people that say that too, but feelings aren't facts. They're temporary. And at the heart of it, I believe they're messengers. They're messengers trying to tell us about needs that we have that are either being met or unmet. So they're not the enemy. And if we're able to sit with them in that discomfort, there's that discomfort again. There's a lot of gold to mine from that experience.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you're bringing this up, because one of the things that even along my own journey that is really it comes back to me over and over again, especially through working with clients, right? Because sometimes clients can also be a reflection of our own mess, because somehow we attract our mirrors in our lives, not just in our marriages, and it happens in other relationships. And one of the things that I realize in talking about, when you really own the fact that your feelings aren't facts, I had to realize at one point, I remember telling my husband, like, I didn't feel these certain things, or I didn't go through these certain things before we got together, right? And I remember correlating it to him, but realizing obviously later that it wasn't about him. It was about me making that shift to no longer have all these other distractions that were kind of outlets to distract myself from my feelings. And it's such a strong thing to experience, but also to be able to help someone navigate. So the fact that you really actually talk about it, because I feel like it's not talked about enough, the because I'm coming from a personal training background and then transitioned into coaching, it's been one of those things that I really put a lot of emphasis towards bridging that gap, because we've got all these emotions, all these feelings welling up. What do we do with them? Yeah. We either divert the attention onto other things, or we sit in it and deal with it and figure it out. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. And that's one of the main keys to creating intimacy between two people is, sharing that emotional experience. And I mean, I have this term called the butt pucker zone, where it's like that zone where it's just so uncomfortable. We kind of want to throw up, and I can feel the butt pucker in the room right now, because sharing that emotional experience, first of all, getting in touch with it and identifying it ourselves is one level of butt pucker, but then sharing it with our partner is like, are you kidding me? But at the same time, every time I do that in my relationship, my husband feels closer to me. He feels more connected. We feel more intimate, and there's a mutual understanding, and also every time I do it, I want to throw up, and I feel like this sensation in my body. And if you experience that, then you know that you're an avoider or a withdrawer.
It's really funny that, like, I don't know which one I connect to the most is your version of it. I call it the right.
Yeah.
but I like butt pucker too.
Unmistakable.
Right. And I tell clients, I'm like, when you feel that,
right on the money. That's when you know. It's like when you have this instinct to like do something and it gives you that feeling, then that's when you know that's what you need to lean into, because that's the green growing edge of growth.
Yes, absolutely. And if I could really emphasize that on in this conversation, in life in general, is embrace that moment, right? Because once we reach that point of embracing it and seeing it as an opportunity versus dread, right? It's like you say, that's where the growth is. And that's I love when we really get to have that conversation and really emphasize that, because it gets skirted over a lot, and it's so key that people can go through therapy for years and years and years and never get to that point where they can grow and get uncomfortable. They either medicate it down in some way, shape, or form, or you get uncomfortable. Well, get comfortable getting uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Bex, I do know that you have a free gift for us. And would you like to express what that gift is?
Oh, I'd be happy to. So I have a free mini training. It's a 4-part training called the 4 Core Relationships to Heal for Healthy, Lasting Love. And it explores these 4 essential relationships that we have with love that need to be explored and addressed in our process of attracting a new partner. Even if you have a partner, these 4 core relationships are essential for the way that we continue to engage with our partner and grow the relationship. So wherever you are in your journey in love, the 4 core relationships is it's an opportunity to explore our patterns and the way that we show up in love so that we can move ever closer to the healthy relationship that we desire.
Love it. And then also you have a course coming up. I almost forgot. Did you want to tell us about the course? It should be launching pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So the course launches in January. It's called Ready for Real Love, and it's a 10-week group course online. And it is specifically geared towards independent women who are calling in a healthy, lasting, loving relationship with an extraordinary partner. And it is a lot of the groundwork, some of the work that we gloss over or skip because it is a little uncomfortable. But the great thing is that I'm infusing a lot of play practices and fun into the course because, when we think of inner work, we don't really necessarily equate that with fun. But the truth is that in order for us to grow or change and create change in our lives, we have to be in a neutral nervous system, like a regulated nervous system state. And one of the most accessible ways to regulate our nervous system is through play and pleasure. So throughout the course, we are infusing play and pleasure while we're digging into some of these, darker corners of our experience, but using mindfulness and meditation, movement, creativity, and play to help us prepare for the last relationship, ideally.
I love it. So it's a nice integrative approach, which is beautiful. Well, Bex, thank you so much for being willing to take out some time and have this conversation. And it has been such a pleasure to talk about the uncomfortable. Right.
Right. Thank you, Lisa. It's been my pleasure.
Well, this has been Creating Magic in Your Relationship. I'm your host, Lisa Holt. Until next time.